I think that I started to set boundaries, and I started to set boundaries in relationships, and it was the hardest thing that I had to do. And it's funny because, a lot of people think that swinging is just a physical thing and it's just about the sex. And the deep love that I had for my friends in this specific swinging community was deep, very deep. It was a love that I don't know if anyone will ever replace that for me, because we spent so much time together and beautiful moments together. I got married and they were like in my wedding. I got engaged. Every great moment for the past 4 years, I shared with them. So having to walk away from that and set a boundary of like, this doesn't feel good for me anymore was very, very hard.
Welcome to Normalizing Non-Monogamy, the podcast where we interview incredible people from all over the world to hear their personal journeys of self-discovery through the lenses of love, sex, and relationships.
Our mission is to show people that they're not alone and to inspire them to embrace their true selves so that together we can open minds and live authentically without shame.
We believe everyone's story is powerful and beautiful, yet it's important to remember that everyone does life a little bit differently and that the views and opinions expressed by our guests do not necessarily reflect our own.
Additionally, we aren't doctors. Please consult a medical professional for anything regarding your health that you might learn about on the show. Enjoy!
Well, welcome to episode 374. We're Finn and Emma, and today we have a wonderful conversation with Kiley. Kiley's in her early 30s and started swinging with her husband about 4 years ago and has been on quite the journey.
It got started a little intense.
It did.
A little fast, a little intense.
It very much did. And she shares so much with us today.
Yeah, this amazing conversation is, as Emma just said, of Kiley's journey of diving in super fast, what toll that took on her and her relationship with her husband, and then her journey to where she is today. And I think also one of the really amazing parts of this conversation is Kiley takes us through how her experiences in swinging and non-monogamy were actually some of the inspiration for her to get sober and get on a path of sobriety, and then what that path looked like and how it changed her relationship to her experiences in non-monogamy. So just, again, a ton of gratitude to you, Kiley, for coming on and sharing so vulnerably with us.
Kiley is also a passionate advocate for non-monogamy and sex work. She's a relationship and sex coach and the host of the Pineapple Express podcast. She talks more about all of this work in the interview itself, but we wanted to remind all of you that you can find links to everything Kiley mentions in the show notes, linked in your podcast player, or on our website, normalizingnonmonogamy.com. Click on the podcast tab.
And with that, for anybody who is a premium subscriber, we're going to jump right into the conversation with Kiley now. And for the rest of you, we've got a couple of quick announcements. First up, what is the premium subscription?
What is it?
How do you skip these announcements up front? I'm not sure why you would want to, but in case you do, you can find out more about the premium subscription on the homepage of our website. It is a way to skip these announcements up front and jump right into the interviews. Again, you can sign up on our homepage, scroll down towards the bottom, and you'll see all the information there of how to sign up.
The first thing we wanted to share with all of you is information about our virtual community. We have been building this online community for the last 5 years, and it's something that Finn and I are both extremely passionate about. We love bringing people together, and the community is now full of over 300 people from all over the world, supporting each other every day. We host our community on an app called Mighty Networks, and we also host monthly workshops and community calls. All of this for only $5 a month. You can sign up at our website and join all of us over at normalizingnonmonogamy.com. Click on the community tab.
Of course, we'd absolutely love to have you join us in our virtual community, but if you're not quite ready for a monthly recurring commitment, we also have a way for you to meet amazing people from around the world via our virtual speed friending events that we host every month. They are open to anybody and everybody. You do not have to be part of our community. You just have to be open-minded and respectful. We bring you together in Zoom with people from all over the world. We ask a thought-provoking question, and then we send you into a breakout room with 4 or 5 other people. We give you a few minutes to talk about it. Then we randomly ask a new question. We scramble the rooms and we do this over and over for a few hours. Our next virtual speed friending event is on January 15th. You can find out more information about how to sign up and join us over on our website, normalizingnonmonogamy.com. There is a giant banner at the top where you can click to learn more and sign up, or you can find out more under the events tab.
If you're listening to this episode on the day it comes out, that is next Wednesday, 1 week from today. Come and join us. Next up, we wanted to remind all of you about our favorite way to get tested for STIs. It is stdcheck.com. This is a service that Finn and I use. We've also been telling all of you about it for years because we absolutely love it. Go to our website, normalizingnonmonogamy.com, click on the resources tab, and use the links there to get $10 off, making a 10-panel test only $129, and an extra bonus, you support the podcast and our work in the meantime. So thank you in advance for using those links, and you get to know your sexual health status, which is the best part of all.
That's the best part.
The best part.
The icing on the cake. And the last thing we want to remind you all is to please reach out to us, send us an email, send us a voicemail. We'd love to have you come on the podcast, share your story. You don't have to be a Kiley. You don't have to be a content creator. You just have to be you. And we would love to get your story out there. Or let us know what you think of the show. If you have feedback or questions, we're here for it. You can find all that information under the Contact Us tab of our website. Our website has lots of amazing tabs.
It does.
So check it out. Again, normalizingnonmonogamy.com. And with that, we're actually going to jump into the interview right now with Kiley, and we will see you all on the other side.
Welcome to the podcast today, Kiley. It's so nice to have you here, and we're excited to dive in and hear more about your story. We've talked a little bit in the past, but it's been a while, and we're excited to dive in. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you guys for having me. I'm super, super excited. I love the podcast so much. It's really an inspiration to a lot of us other podcasters out there. So thank you guys for what you do.
Yeah,
Awesome.
Love it. Well, maybe just to kick us off, do you mind introducing yourself for anybody who's not familiar with the lovely Kiley, and we'll figure out where to go from there.
Hi, my name is Kiley, and I am a 33-year-old from Cleveland. I identify as a swinger, but I'm now sort of in all the non-monogamous communities. I started off content creating very soon after I started swinging with my husband because I thought, it would be a really great idea to share this with the world, not recognizing that the world, there's a stigma against non-monogamous people. So I've been content creating for about 3 years now, actually 4 years, which led me to my podcast, that led me to start working with non-monogamy advocacy organizations. And now I'm a sex and relationship coach. So everything has really, my life has changed so much in the past 4 years, and I'm so grateful.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, and one of the circles we run in together is on some of the organization for polyamory and ethical non-monogamy, the open calls. We run into each other there often, so it's great to have you here and to shout out your work a bit. So thank you for doing all of that.
Yes, we would love to go back in time and kind of see, where did non-monogamy first enter your life to begin with? Was it 4 years ago, or was there something before then?
So when I knew that I was bisexual from like the time I was like 16, 17 years old. And I started experimenting a little bit. I wouldn't necessarily call that the lifestyle. What I would call that is like just experimentation with sexuality. I did date couples when I was like 18, 19 years old. But the reality of that is I still consider that more so like an experimentation as opposed to like being immersed in the lifestyle, the swingers lifestyle. And so, yeah, and I was in relationships before, and, I always was like, I want to have threesomes. So when I got together with my now husband back in 2016, that on our first date, I told him, I was like, I'm bisexual. This is a big part of my life, and I don't just want to like continue to be with one person. I would like to have relationships with other women, whether that's sexual or, like romantic relationships. And he was like, yeah, I'm down. So for years and years, we searched vanilla dating apps like Tinder or like, Plenty of Fish. And we didn't really have a great time with that because that's not what they're meant for. So a friend of his said, "Oh, you guys should go to a swingers club. Maybe you can find some other polyamorous people," because we had talked about joining, like becoming polyamorous and finding, a girlfriend, unicorn hunting essentially, which we didn't know was a thing. But his friend said, "Oh, you guys should go to a sex club downtown." So he asked me about it and I said, "No way am I going and hanging out with a bunch of old people and I'm not putting my keys in a bowl. That's not happening."
Had a few stereotypes still hanging around, yeah?
Well, because that was the only representation that I had at that point of like what a swinger was this episode of That 70s Show, which I'm sure that you guys are familiar with, where like Kitty and Red, their neighbor or their friend, they're swingers and like they end up at a swingers party and like everyone's putting their keys in a bowl and it's super funny. And Kitty and Red are like, "Oh my God, we're at a swingers party," and that was like the only anything that I had to think of what a swinger was because there was no representation. So that's what I thought. And so I told him no. And then COVID hits and we've got a lot of time and a lot of internet time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we just sat and we talked about things and we talked about opening up. And so like I'm on the internet one day and I was like, "Oh yeah, I remember that swinger club that he had brought up. We should go." And so I like surprised him and I called him and I was like, "Guess what? We're going to a swingers club on Saturday." And this was during COVID. So it was weird in Ohio, and I'm from Cleveland, Ohio. We had this law that was like you couldn't be out past 10 o'clock. So the first time we ever went to a swingers club was during the day, and it was from like 5 to 9 p.m. And I will never forget that experience because at 8:45, the people are coming in. They're like, "Get your clothes on. You have to go." So yeah, we went to the swingers club for the first time and it was an amazing experience. And I finally felt like I had found my people. I felt like I could be myself and everybody, they were non-judgmental and they understood me and I could express my sexuality. And my husband was like very open to letting me kind of run with everything. And he just kind of was like, "All right, well, I trust your judgment and I'm here for whatever," And I just felt so free. And so like we were in the car and I remember I was like, "I found our people. Like, this is what I've waited my whole life for." I was so happy. And he was too. So yeah, that was our first kind of experience. I mean, we had a good experience. I ended up being in an 8-woman orgy, which was like amazing for me because it was really, really cool. And after that, I was just so excited to share it with the world that I did.
Yeah.
Like right away after that first experience.
Yes.
Yeah. Awesome.
I literally the next day was like making TikToks about it because I had noticed, I'm like, because we were researching swinging online and there wasn't a lot of like educational resources, maybe a couple of blogs from SLS, which is coincidentally where we found out how like what soft swinging and like full swapping and boundaries and rules and like how to deal with jealousy. But that wasn't very much. And there just wasn't a whole lot of educational information out there. There wasn't any books. I did read The Ethical Slut, but again, that's not necessarily for swinging. That's like all of non-monogamy. So I was like, why isn't there anything on TikTok or online educating people? I should do that. And my husband was like, "You should." So I did.
Amazing. Well, I want to come back to that because I think there's a lot in there that I want to pick apart, but I'm curious for the few years leading up to well, you said you were on dating apps and it sounds like you kind of came to your husband initially and said, "Look, this is me. I don't want to give this up." And you kind of tried, but it sounds like there was no real anything actually happening. It was more just sort of a theory and it was a thing you were both sort of open to, but never really came to fruition. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, for like really the first 4 years of your relationship, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it was like the first 4 years, and we had went back and forth on the dating app. We had met some people, but a lot of them we found were like men just pretending to be women, like trying to get naked pictures of us, or it just really, it was a lot of like couples, which we didn't know then that would be something that we would enjoy. We thought that we just wanted a single female. And again, we didn't have any representation of what swinging was until my husband's friend came to him and was like, and he coincidentally, so his friend, and we're still really good friends with them, by the way, but coincidentally, he was like, yeah, my wife and I kind of went through the same thing, and we found this swinging thing and really enjoy it and love it.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so when you two went that first night that first afternoon, we'll say that first afternoon to the swinging club, did you go in with any like agreements, rules, anything like that? Or was it sort of just, we're going to go and see what comes our way?
We did. And so this is why I get so embarrassed when I tell this story, because like I'm a swinger educator and I educate people not to do this. So if you're listening and you're new to non-monogamy or swinging, like, don't do this. This is a terrible idea. So we did. And I was like so afraid that I was going to get super jealous because I had always been jealous in other relationships. And I was like, my husband was just open for whatever, right? So I was like, all right, we have the one pussy policy, which is, if for those who don't know what I'm saying, we call it OPP. So he's only allowed to play with me and enjoy me. And I get to experience, other women. Then we have the no kissing rule, which a lot of people do have when early on. And then we were like, and we're only going to soft swing. We're not going to fully have like penetration. We're not going to do like full swapping. It's only going to be like soft swinging because we knew what that meant. And so we went to the club with those expectations. An hour or two into the play sessions, we were both like, no, that's going to the wayside. We're full swapping and like, we're going to experience this. Like we went balls to the wall, which I do not recommend. It worked for us, but it doesn't work for everybody. So yeah, I remember like our first full swap was that night. It was the first night that we went to the club, and we were with this couple and we both kind of looked at each other and we were like, is this okay? Can we do this? And my husband was like, are you sure that you're okay? And I was like, we're going to do this. Yes. And it was like, I always explain it like getting on a roller coaster. You know how like when you're going up that hill and your belly has like butterflies in it and you're so nervous, but you're excited because you're like, this thing is going to happen. So when he like penetrated the girl, I thought I was just going to like pull her hair out and scream and yell. But actually what ended up happening was the opposite. I got this sense of what I now know to be as compersion, erotic compersion, where I felt this sort of like pleasure that I had never felt before. I was like, wow, this act, I'm enjoying watching. Wow, this is really hot. So, and I enjoyed the swapping with the other guy, but the thing that I enjoyed more was seeing him. And then I was like, this is strange. Why am I feeling these feelings? And then we talked about it, and now we know that to be erotic compersion.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Amazing. I'm curious, Kiley, going not necessarily with where you're at today and all of the knowings you have, but with knowing where you were back then, how would you do it differently?
Yeah, I'm curious about the same thing.
Oh God, I have so many ways that I could have done it. Well, first of all, I would have slowed down. I think that the way that we did it, there's nothing wrong with the way that we did it because we didn't know. But if I could go back in time, I would tell myself, girlfriend, it's a marathon, not a sprint. You have the rest of your life to do this and experience this. Take care of yourself, take care of your feelings, communicate those feelings, and get really clear on why you're doing this And you and your partner need to communicate that with each other. This is what I would tell myself. And another thing I would tell myself is that if something is not making you feel good, or if you don't like something, don't say yes to it because you want to please other people. And this is like taking one for the team. I think one of the things that happens a lot when you start in swinging is like you get really excited and you're like, I just want to experience all this pleasure and all this great sex. And what ended up happening was I found myself taking one for the team a lot. And I found myself not experiencing great sex, but I was experiencing a lot more like being let down. And if I could go back in time, I would tell myself, like, no, you don't have to do that to enjoy this experience. And another thing that I would tell myself is to get really clear on communication with other couples and don't drink so much. So I am a recovering alcoholic. I've been sober for 17 months now.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And it's the lifestyle for me has changed so much because of that. And I think that I made choices under the influence that I wouldn't have made in a sober mind. And I'm so grateful for my sobriety because now I get to make better choices. And usually the issues that we ran into with other couples or with each other had everything to do with miscommunication and too much alcohol.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lessons learned in not great ways.
I love too that one of the first things you said is that you didn't know any better, right?
Yeah.
When you were first starting. And I love that you give yourself that grace because our story is different than yours in many ways, but so many of the things you touched on are what we experienced for the first handful of years that we were in the world of swinging, right? There's the taking one for the team, both, the best ones are when you're both people pleasing and you leave and you're like, realize that you both took one for the team somehow. And you're like, how did that happen? Like, how did we fuck up our communication that badly that neither of us really wanted to be there? So I love too what you said about slowing down, that, right? Like that first night, you don't have to ride all the rides, right? They'll still be there the next time, or the time after that. And so being able to say, well, hey, these were our guidelines for the night. We're going to stay within them tonight. We'll go home and we can reassess them before the next time we come out. And so I love that the things that you were like, these are the things I would have done different. I'm like, those are the same damn things that I would have done different.
A lot of them. Yes.
So,
yes.
Yeah. I think there's just such common mistakes, or not even mistakes, but
there's this shame in that too, right? Like I think a lot of times we shame ourselves for those things. And it's like, there is no like we had the tools that we had when we had them. We didn't know that there was relationship and sex coaching. I can tell you 100%. Oh, and one more thing I would do, I would have gotten relationship and sex coaching with my partner before getting into the lifestyle, because I truly, honestly believe I learned more from getting that and doing that with him in the 6 months that we did it, as opposed to like the 3 years that we were in therapy together. Like, it's so transformative. And I think that it would have really given us a great, like, it just would have given us a better foundation than what we had. Cause we just had no reference for any of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that you say that, right? Because this is one of those things where it's easy. I think it's easy sometimes for people who've been in this community for a while to sit up on a bit of a high horse and say, well, that's wrong and that's wrong and that's wrong. But so many of these resources, especially, 5 years ago, and especially I would say, a decade plus ago when Emma and I were doing this, those resources are hard to find. You're having to like pull them out of the corners of the internet often. And you don't necessarily know what you're looking for. And so it's easy to look back and say, well, you should have known everything. But that's not how anything works, right? We start somewhere and we learn, and then we look back and go, ooh, that wasn't great, or that wasn't great. But we were doing the best we could with the tools we had at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And there's so much more now, even now than there was then. And I'm so grateful for that. And I think that a lot of it has to do with the fact that I think during COVID, and I call them COVID babies, right? So I say a lot of swingers found swinging during COVID because they had that time. I talked to so many couples, when I'm at events, and I'll be like, oh, well, how long have you guys been swinging? Oh, we started swinging in like 2021, 2022, like 2020, during COVID when they had that time to sit with each other and talk about it. So now we have this plethora of information and great podcasts like this one and many others where people can now listen to other people's experiences. But I do think the thing about swinging and non-monogamy in general is that there's no one size fits all. Everyone's going to do it differently. What worked for me and my partner is not going to work for you guys because we all have different relationships.
Yeah. And we're all different people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I love that you point that out too. And I'm really curious. So you go to this first club during 2020, and then it sounds like you kind of dove in pretty quickly to a lot more than that, pretty like in the coming months. Is that accurate?
Yes. Yeah. That was like, I would say, I always make this joke that like, how people who are polyamorous have NRE, new relationship, what is it? New relationship
energy. Yeah.
I think that in a way I had this NRE with swinging. Like my brain was on that swinging drug. And so I was just like, I found my people, and like these people finally accept me for who I am, and I can be my sexy self. And so I was just so excited to share it with the world and then start traveling and like meeting all these new people. And so it was kind of a whirlwind, like the first 2 years of swinging. And then after that, that was when we were sort of able to slow down a little bit.
Yeah. Wow. That's like, to hit like full speed for 2 years. And yeah, that's a lot.
What did it look like for those two?
Yeah.
Like, what did full speed look like? Because I mean, I know ours was like, we would go maybe monthly, and we've talked to people who are like, we go every weekend, or we're like in it. Like, I'm curious, what was full speed for Kiley?
Full speed was once or twice a month. And then like about 6 months in, we, started like hanging out with people that we had met online on TikTok, other content creators, other podcasters. We were like traveling around the country, but like these were full-fledged takeover weekends of like nonstop partying, nonstop orgies, nonstop sex. And then, we just got like, I remember in like September or maybe it was August of 2022, we both looked at each other and we were like, I'm tired. This is a lot.
Yeah, because most of those parties don't end at 9 p.m. That was an anomaly.
No.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot of balls to the wall.
Yeah.
Wow.
Go and go and go. Yeah.
And the whole world was watching too. That's the other thing. Like the whole world was watching us online. So like that added another sort of facet to all of it because we were new to swinging and the world was seeing, I was very authentic about it, like my ups and downs, and they knew everything because I was sharing that with the world. And that sort of made me want to slow down even more.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because you were sharing that all on TikTok, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That you had started like the day after going to that first club. So you had like 2 years of sharing everything.
I'm curious what that was like for you, because it sounded like you alluded to earlier that like you started to put it out there and then maybe realized that the world wasn't quite as open to the ideas that you had. And I'm curious what that experience was like, starting to grow in popularity and a following, and can be salacious content, and that usually takes off pretty quick. So like what was that ride like for you?
A lot of ups and downs. I mean, I think that a lot of people, they say this sort of content can be triggering for people. And I mean, it's because it's so out of the normal, right? Like we are raised in a monogamous society. Like that is just a societal construct. So when people see somebody on the internet being free and expressing themselves, especially someone who socializes as a woman, expressing herself in a very sexual way, that can be a little bit triggering for people. And then there was a lot of very negative comments about the way that I looked, about the way that I dressed, about the people that I hung out with, or my husband. Like we did Love Don't Judge in 2022, which is like sort of like a reality show. And I remember like reading the comments and everyone was like, she's making him do this and she's like holding him hostage. Blink twice if you're like being held hostage. And I'm just like, no, my husband just doesn't like him and I are so different. I love being like front facing. He hates it. Like he hates talking to people about swinging. He just wants to do the swinging, you know? So, I think that, yeah, we just got a lot of scrutiny and it kind of did really weigh on my mental health a lot, especially because I was drinking a lot and I was just in like a really unhealed space. And I think that in some ways I sort of used this lifestyle to kind of like feel better about myself. You know, like I would feel good when I was at these swinger events because like everyone was paying attention to me and like I could hang out in the VIP section because I'm a content creator and everybody knows me. And it started to feel really like weird. It started to feel like maybe people weren't hanging out with me because they actually liked Kiley, but because they just wanted a piece of what I had and when it came to like content creating. And so I really had to like sit down with myself and think about the parts of the lifestyle that made me feel good and why those made me feel good, as opposed to is this making me feel good because I'm filling some sort of a void?
Mm-hmm.
Am I trying to bring myself back to my high school days when, you know, like I was not popular or cool and now I feel that in a way? So like, where's this coming from and what do we need to heal from? And that took me a long time. I'm still healing from that. But I do think that like a lot of people think that they want to be a content creator and talk about swinging on the internet and they don't realize what comes along with that. And it's a lot more than just being outed to your family, which is another terrible thing. But yeah. Or can.
Yeah. And I'm along those same lines. Like, how did that go being, because you're sharing this on the internet. So kind of like you're telling everyone in your life as well, if they choose to see it, if they go looking for it. But how did that part go?
I think that, you know, I was really open even from the get-go with like my coworkers and like people, because I wasn't working a job where I could, thank God, be fired. I know that there's a lot of people who do work a job and they can still be fired for outing themselves as a swinger. But I was really open and honest from the beginning because I never thought, I had like no shame in what we were doing. Like because I didn't think that there was anything wrong with it. I just thought that we were exploring our sexuality together, you know? So my parents, I think that my parents took it the hardest. And when I say my parents, probably specifically my mom was not very happy about it. And me and her really, had some words. And then my husband's family as well, like they still don't take it well. My mom today, her and I have a great relationship. We talk every day. And she came to terms with it. And now it's really helped my mom, who's very conservative. She's very like, sex was always like really shameful for her. She's now able to deal with some of her own emotions. And she just says like, I'm so proud of you for being out and advocating for people, you know. And now she's like, she used to really not like, you know, the LGBTQIA plus community. Now she like kind of talks good about them and like just, she talks good about everybody who's different. And she just says to me like, I know that you just love differently. And I support you and respect you. And my dad, of course, was like, oh, I knew you were a swinger. I've always known, you know? But that was the toughest part. Yeah.
Well, it's amazing that your mom has sort of come around on it and like that you've gone through that with her. Like I can imagine that over time actually strengthened your bond more than anything, but that's a scary, I mean, it's a huge risk to take.
Yeah.
And not everybody is going to be that lucky. And that's the scary reality is like a lot, you know, and we went through like a custody battle when we first came out. Like my husband has a daughter from a previous relationship and like her mom took us to court so that he could lose all custody because we were out swingers. And like, this is another one of the hard parts about being out. And so I do understand why so many people in the swinger community and that are non-monogamous, like, stay very discreet about it, because these are still very harsh realities.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, it's not easy at all.
Yeah.
Which leads us to the advocacy work, and I'm going to put a pin in that and come back around to that.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to dive in a little bit more on this shift in 2022. You're just like, we need to slow down. It sounds like the two of you kind of reached that around the same time. And what did that look like at that time?
We sort of just had a conversation about it, and we were like, we have been traveling. This is costly. This is time consuming. We're away from our children a lot more than we would like to be. And we sort of came to this agreement that the swinging was going to be, you know, we could pick a couple, maybe one or two big events a year to travel, but like, moving forward in 2023, 2024, and beyond, we were going to sort of just stay at home, stay local, and travel because Ohio, believe it or not, we're from Cleveland, is one of the number one states when it comes to swinging. Like, we have a lot of great communities around us. Our home club is amazing. So we have all of these things around us. So we were like, we're kind of just going to really focus on our own relationship, because there were some holes there too. You know, we're going to really just focus on each other and kind of our own community around here. And we both agreed with each other, and really, like, it's went really well. You know, we just constantly communicate about it, you know, and if he's like, oh, you know, we haven't really been to the club, or we haven't like been hanging out with our friends, you know, he communicates that with me, and I'm like, all right, well, we'll plan a weekend, you know, and vice versa. But I think that it's all about that constant communication. And like, sometimes you do that's the beautiful thing about swinging, is that you don't have to go balls to the wall. You can, but you don't have to. You can take breaks. You can pause. You can slow down and focus on your relationship with your partner, or your relationship with your children, or your relationship with, you know, maybe you want to explore other facets of non-monogamy or kink or whatever you want to explore. Like, swinging is there always, but it also doesn't always have to be there.
Yeah. It can look different ways and show up in your life in different ways throughout your life.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like that slowdown too coincided with a slowdown on, or a shift maybe in your social media presence and sharing everything. Is that accurate to you?
It did, because I was finding myself feeling really violated. And I was finding myself in relationships with friends and people who, again, it just really felt like I was being used, and it felt like I was, you know, doing all of this work and like trying to like help so many people, you know, with their social media presence. And it just really felt like uncomfortable for me at a certain point. And I was like, wait a minute, you know, I don't want accolades back from you, but like, I thought we were friends. I thought that this was a community. I didn't know that it was like, I had to, you know, it was to the point where I had to go to my friends' assistants to get a hold of them. And then I was like, oh, this isn't comfortable for me anymore. I don't want to be a part of this. And also, I'm here destigmatizing swinging online, and I'm educating people. Yet a lot of the content that I'm making with people who are also swingers feels really like we're using the swinger community and exploiting them. We're swingers. Why are we exploiting other swingers? Why are we exploiting ourselves when we're supposed to be educating people and helping and supporting people? But we're doing stuff for views, which I understand to an extent, because I am a content creator. But I think that there has to be this ethical balance with it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And it sounds like that was some of you alluded earlier to kind of starting to dig into yourself, right? Like, are people really my friend, or are they just, am I only here because of my social media? And I'm curious, what else did you kind of uncover about yourself in this time, and sort of, where that took you into shifts for how you showed up online, how you showed up at events, how you showed up for yourself and your relationships? What did that look like?
I think that I started to set boundaries, and I started to set boundaries in relationships, and it was the hardest thing that I had to do. And it's funny because you know, a lot of people think that swinging is just a physical thing and it's just about the sex. And the deep love that I had for my friends in this specific swinging community, like, was deep, very deep. It was a love that I don't know if anyone will ever replace that for me, because we spent so much time together and beautiful moments together. You know, I got married and they were like in my wedding. I got engaged. Like, every great moment for the past 4 years, I shared with them. So having to walk away from that and set a boundary of like, this doesn't feel good for me anymore, was very, very hard and hurt. And, you know, now a year later after that, I'm now able to like be okay with it, and kind of heal a little bit more. But like, I think it's such an amazing thing how close you can really get to people. But sometimes you have to walk away from situations. And I think that I was proud of myself for setting boundaries, but it sent me on like this healing journey that like, that was like right after I got sober too. A couple months after I got sober, I started to recognize like, I need to change some of my relationships. And now looking back, I'm so grateful for those relationships because they helped me learn who I was and what I didn't want to experience. And I'm grateful because it brought me to where I'm at now. But I think that, I think it's tough. Non-monogamy is like all about self-healing and like inner work. Everyone's like, oh no, it's all about your partner, or it's all about, it's so much inner work and healing and having to like deal with rejection and deal with like setting boundaries with other people and with yourself. And like, that shit is hard.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not easy at all. Yeah. And then touching too, like, you're doing all of that. You're setting like, you're on this shift. It sounds like it was maybe a year time frame where you and your now husband are like, we're backing away from your all the travel, doing things more locally, taking care of your relationship more and your family, and doing all of that, setting boundaries. I love that you shared that piece. And I'm curious, it sounds like obviously getting sober was a big thing for you and really shifted non-monogamy and your life. And I wanted to just, I guess, see if you'd be willing to talk a little bit about that, because I think that alcohol use in general can be such a big thing for people and really difficult to change.
Yeah, I recognized that I had an issue when, like back in June of 2023. And I just kind of said to my husband, I said, I don't know what to do. And he said, I don't know either. And I said, I'm going to go, into a 12-step program. And so I joined it because that was all that I knew what to do. Like, I didn't.
Yeah.
I that was how I grew up. I grew up in a 12-step program, and so I went, and I only spent like about 6 months going consistently, but then I recognized the foundations of it were good, and like it works differently for everybody. So like, this isn't, professional advice or anything like that, but for me, it was like finding myself and finding my spirituality and having a very solid foundation of spirituality and like finding things that I liked to do again, right? Like I like swinging and I like being with friends, but I also really like, I like art and I like doing theater. So like I started doing those things again, and I like writing and I love all that stuff. So, it was just getting this really good foundation. And now like, I don't even think about drinking. I don't even think about, even when I'm at a swinger event and I feel like a little bit anxious, and I'm in a social setting, that like, I remember my first swinger event. I don't know why I decided to, but I got sober a week before Naughty in New Orleans. So
Yeah, that's not easy.
So that's like going to the Super Bowl. Yeah.
yeah, that was crazy if you think about it, like you're about to embark on the biggest swinger event of the year, and you're in New Orleans, which is like a huge, drinking city. And I got sober, and I always think back to that. And I'm like, if I could do that, I can do anything. Like,
Wow.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And it's changed my experience with the lifestyle a lot because I have firmer boundaries. The reality is, when you are under the influence of substances, you do things that you wouldn't normally have done. And that's just, your inhibitions are loose. That's what it's for, And so I don't have that crutch anymore. So I'm a little bit more, I guess, I'm way slower to anything. And, my husband accepts that and supports that. And he's just like, we're going at your pace and whatever you're comfortable with. But it has made me have a different relationship with the lifestyle. And I think if anybody who's listening, who's like, they are sober and they're afraid to join the lifestyle because they're like, I'm not going to fit in because I don't drink, you will, and you'll be fine. There's actually a lot of people in the lifestyle now who don't drink. I don't know how it was 10 years ago, 15 years ago, but today, as a lot of people don't even bring alcohol to events because they know that like they really want to enjoy the moments with the people. And that's what I get to experience every time I go to an event.
Yeah.
That's amazing, Kiley.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's vulnerable, and just appreciate you touching on that part of your journey in such a profound way.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's too, right. This is something we saw I think we saw a lot of when we were going to parties. I mean, I guess our first sort of dove in around like 2010, and we're in it for about, 7, 8 years, something like that. And I think a lot of what we would see were people who could really only do it if they were drunk, right? They were really actually uncomfortable with it, or there was probably a whole lot of shame, or just there's so much baked into this. And so it makes sense why escaping through alcohol or other substances is the road that a lot of people take. Yeah, because it helps you get over the nerves. It helps you do something that everybody else outside of the building is telling you is terrible. And so it makes sense. But then I love that you're kind of getting to that place, or you got to that place of like, wait, hold on. I want to enjoy it, and I'm not enjoying it, or I'm having really not great experiences because I'm outside of my own integrity. But I don't even know that because I'm not, I'm not sober to have that judgment. So we've seen a lot of that. I mean, we experienced some of it, right? I've been drunk at parties, wishing we hadn't been. I mean, there's just so much of that. And so again, thank you for sharing everything you have on that as well. And I would love to just kind of touch too on, you've talked a lot about your own personal growth and everything for that. I'm curious how you've seen your partnership with your husband evolve over the years. And you touched on, right, that sort of 2-year pedal to the metal. It wasn't easy on your partnership as well. And I'm curious what that trajectory looked like and what you two have done since then to sort of bring that back to where you want it to be.
It's really funny. I remember a moment when we first started swinging and we were going through something, and it was like one of us he had broken a boundary, and we're in the car and I'm crying and I'm like, if I didn't have 70,000 followers, we would divorce and like leave each other because I feel like you cheated on me, and like just this sort of, we knew that we were having, like, the whole world was watching us make these mistakes. And through that all, we were so resilient, and I think the strength that I've seen in him is that he has always been so supportive of me and my journey, and I'm supportive of him. I think what's interesting is we move at a different pace. Because I'm immersed in non-monogamy all day, every day, I feel like my journey is a little bit different now than his journey. And we have different reasons for being in the lifestyle. He enjoys sex with multiple people, and he will be the first to tell you, I just like having sex with lots of women. And I enjoy watching that, but like, I'm in the lifestyle now for friendship and connection and like the social aspect of it, right? And we talk about that and we're both okay with that. Like, I'm okay with his journey and he's okay with mine. And we just constantly communicate about it. But the communication has gotten so much better, especially like we can communicate about so much more now, like finances, kids, who's going to take the trash out, consent, right? Like our sex life. Cause I think that something that I've struggled with, this is another vulnerable moment, getting into my 30s, recognizing that like sex doesn't really feel good for me anymore because I don't know how to communicate what I need during sex with my partner because I was never taught those skills, right? Like as women, we're taught, all right, you just lay there and take it, and then kind of a lot of the shift that I see a lot of my friends and a lot of women in their 30s have is like, no, I don't even want to do it anymore. So non-monogamy has taught me a lot of a good foundation to be able to communicate with him. And he's gotten better at communicating with me what he needs. So I think non-monogamy can really, like, even if you're a monogamous person, you can learn a lot from how we communicate because nothing is off limits to talk about. And that's a really good feeling. And I think that he feels the same way. And I think for him, he just is really appreciative of how much freedom he has, knowing that like we have this open-ended relationship where it's like, he can explore in the way that he feels good and I can explore. And yeah, I think that he's grown a lot. Both of us have.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing all of that as well. And just the vulnerable parts too of just like your own journey around sex. And yes, I agree. Like oftentimes, I mean, many people as they get older have shifts with sex, but especially women, I think that, you're like, I think you start to realize, oh, it doesn't have to be what it was before. It can be different. I can speak up. I can share things differently. And yeah, it's that there is that shift often for many people, and just appreciate you touching on that too. And I'm curious if you don't mind sharing kind of like what does it look like? What does your relationship with your husband and also with non-monogamy look like today?
So today I still am a swinger, but I think I always say this, I hang out with swingers. I also hang out with polyamorous people. We consider ourselves more non-monogamous than anything. I think that all the communities for me have kind of shifted together, like the kink community, swinger, polyamorous community, because I've learned so much from the relationship diversity. We created our own non-monogamous group here in Cleveland, and we started holding these events. And I thought like people were going to hate each other because there's like this swinger polyamorous like paradigm of like, we don't like each other. But the reality is they do, and they get along really well because we can learn so much from those communities. So I've learned a lot about myself and what I want out of relationships with other people. So we're swingers, but we have this sort of open-ended thought process of like, hey, if you're out in the world and you just happen to meet somebody and those feelings go beyond, sexual, and you want to develop something more, like, that is okay. We communicate about that. We kind of don't like to sit in just this box of one form of non-monogamy, and I love learning about all of them. So I think that's been sort of my shift, but I still definitely consider myself a swinger, and I love hanging out with my swinger friends. I love going to swinger parties. I feel like for me, and my relationship has shifted a lot because of just the education that I've got on it. And also, I think my relationship with the community has changed a little bit, because I think that swinging is moving in a more of a modern direction. And I kind of feel like it's been traditional for so long, and some of the leaders in power are afraid of that shift when we have the younger generation coming in and taking over. 56% of the lifestyle is millennials, and we have Gen Zers coming up, so recognizing that we should start modernizing this a little bit so that everyone feels comfortable and everyone feels safe and everyone feels welcome is really important. And I think that over time, my relationship with swinger events, they feel very heteronormative. They feel very mononormative. They feel like there's a lot of couples privilege. And this is something that I have really struggled with. And I have not been quiet about it. And I'm never going to be quiet about it, because I do see just in the same way that I have evolved, I see a lot of other swingers evolving, and they're getting to the same place of like, no, we're non-monogamous. We flow a little bit more, It's not quite this one box. We can be all the boxes or none of the boxes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that, Kiley, and I think that's one of the things that we saw so much of over our time doing this is all of the things you touched on there too, right? The heteronormativity, the mononormativity, the just so many of these mindsets. I mean, I feel one of the most toxic is the women definitely need to be bisexual. Men definitely should not be, right? And then you start talking to people and you realize that really what's happening is that's total bullshit. And it's not even really how it's happening when you actually start talking to people. That like behind closed doors, those aren't the norms, and those aren't the way people are relating to one another. And the one that I think if ever I poke fun at anybody, it's the swingers who say, well, we don't get feelings. And then like 2 years later, you're talking to them, they're like, so anyway, we both fell in love and here we are. And you're like, oh, I thought you didn't get feelings. And that's the one where, it's scary. That's the scary piece for many people is falling in love. If you can just say, well, it's just sex, you're just going to have sex and then we're going to go home and we're going to forget about those people and life's going to go back to normal. And we can always just hit eject and go away. And then once love and emotion and all the feelings come in, it's not as easy to just eject, because you're starting to humanize the people on the other side of the equation. And so I love that you're not quiet about this, because I think it's really important, and grateful that you're out there doing the work you're doing.
Thank you.
Yeah. And that also gets to what I'd love for you to touch on is, what does your work look like today, and where can people find you and support you?
So today I do a lot of advocacy work with organizations like Open, the organizations for polyamory and ethical non-monogamy, which was one of the organizations that really inspired me to branch out, and start evolving with these non-monogamous communities as opposed to like staying just with the swinger community. And that really like was life-changing for me, because then I've met so many beautiful polyamorous people, on the journey, and I've learned a lot from them. They have great peer support groups and just so many resources. that are free for people. Like it's beautiful. And then I work with NCSF, so the National Coalition for Sexual Freedom, and they do a lot of work around kink and alternative relationships like non-monogamy, and they do a lot of education with consent. And so I'm on their consent counts committee, their PR committee, and their educational outreach committee. So what I'll do is I'll go to events and table for them and educate people about NCSF and what they're doing in consent. And, they do a lot of different workshops and stuff at these events, which are amazing. And I've learned so much about kink from them. It's so funny. Just like I've been working with them for 2 years, and they just will be in meetings and they'll say something about kink. And I'm like, wow, that's fascinating. I never knew that before, because a lot of them are part of the kink community as well as the non-monogamy community, but it's great to learn from them. And then Woodhall, which is a sex work organization, but they're sexual freedom as well. But generally, like they're more on the sex work side, and NCSF is more on like everything, laws and sort of all those great things. They provide a lot of, they all provide resources, but anyways. No, sorry, I'm ranting about them because I just love them all so much. And they
rant away. These are a fantastic organization.
Yes,
so you're
yes.
happy to plug them here.
Yeah, they've just been like so. I cannot even explain to you how grateful I am that I get to work with them, and like I learned so much. I wish people knew like how amazing they truly are, because they've taught me so much, and they do so much for the community, and people don't even know it or recognize it. Advocacy work is not easy work, and it's time consuming, but it's something that can be really beautiful because you meet different people and you learn from different people. So yeah. And then now, I'm a sex and a relationship coach. So I work with especially like people who are non-monogamous, and that looks really different coming from like being a stripper, which I was in sex work for a long time, to now like being a sex coach, just loving my work every day and getting to like work with these amazing clients, specifically like single men who really, historically need the most help with swinging and non-monogamy. So you can find me on all of the socials. I'm on TikTok. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Twitter, but like that's really just for butthole pictures, because I used to post a lot of butthole pictures. I don't really anymore, guys. Sorry. Because I moved away from like the sex work online because again, like it didn't feel comfortable for me anymore. And that's okay. You can be a swinger and you don't have to have an OnlyFans. Like that's totally fine.
That's true.
Yeah.
Totally true.
Yes, very true.
But we all have buttholes. Just putting it out there.
We do. But yeah, so Sexy Swinger Chick on most of the platforms except for Instagram. That's the Pineapple Express podcast, which is my podcast, which is a millennial swingers podcast, but we do all non-monogamy. I have polyamorous guests on there. I have a very diverse range of types of guests on there. I have sex workers on there and relationship anarchists, because I love learning about other people's stories, because then I can learn something about myself. So Pineapple Express podcast, it's on all podcast platforms. And yeah, sexyswingerchick.net if you want to learn more.
Amazing.
Awesome.
Links to everything that you just shared, links to everything Kiley just shared will be in our show notes as well. So you don't have to go and try to write all those things down. We'll make sure you can find everything easily.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And maybe before we let you go, Kiley, one final question, if you're open to sharing. I just have this hunch that in your time, you may have had a blooper or two. And I'm curious if you'd be open to sharing something funny that's happened over your years of exploring swinging or non-monogamy.
Okay. So I was thinking about this today. So it's funny that you asked me this question, because I was literally thinking, I hadn't thought about this in a long time. So we were at an event in Pennsylvania, and there was what I assume is like pepperoni or sausage or something on the dance floor. Okay, so my friend Joe, and I was not wearing shoes because I don't know. I don't like wearing shoes, I guess. And especially when you're dancing and you're having fun, we were dancing on the dance floor. And he's like, oh my God, Kiley, you stepped in shit. You stepped in shit. And he's like screaming at me across the dance floor. So he like makes me wash my feet in the hotel room. And he's videoing this and he's like, this is so fucking gross. You guys shit on your feet. And I'm like, dude, this is pepperoni. So this guy that we knew brings the pepperoni into the room and he's like, look, it's not shit. It's just pepperoni, I swear. And it was hilarious, but like, you never know what's going to ensue at a swinger party. And my friend Joe was like, one of those old people in the diapers, shit on the floor, there's shit everywhere. Like we couldn't stop laughing. Shout out.
Yeah, totally. I'm relieved it wasn't shit. I'm also perplexed at why there's slices of pepperoni on the floor.
My husband till this day still swears it was shit. But the guy that brought it in the room, our friend, swears it wasn't. I don't know. I was washing my feet. So
yes, I will say that is my number one advice for anybody who goes to a swinger party or let's say any party, but swinger parties for sure. Wash your feet before you get into bed.
Yeah, and wear shoes.
Wear shoes and wash your feet. Yeah.
Yes. Comfortable shoes so that you don't have to take your shoes off.
Yes,
correct.
yes.
And leave the pepperonis off the dance floor.
Yeah, and don't bring Joe to a party because he's gonna... No, I'm just kidding. I love Joe. Love you, Joe. I love you, if you're listening.
Joe just got blacklisted, but that's all right. Amazing. Well, thank you, Kiley, for coming on today, for sharing so much of your story and for your vulnerability with us. Is there anything that we haven't asked you about or talked about that you want to get out in the world before we let you go this evening?
I just want to say that, like, if you're new to non-monogamy and you're curious about swinging and you're like, I'm not really sure, I think that, swinging is such a beautiful thing if you allow it to be. It's such a transformative journey. And I think that everybody should try it if they're really thinking about it and considering it, because the community is my favorite part about it. And it's so beautiful. You're going to make, even if you don't have sex with anybody, just have fun. Just make new friends and make new connections. You don't have to fuck them. You just have fun, like we had at that party with the pepperoni, like just have fun because the lifestyle is a lot of fun. So yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, that's amazing.
You too can have your own pepperoni story.
Yeah, right?
Amazing.
Just remember to wash your feet.
That's right. Well, thank you again one more time, Kiley, for being here and for sharing. And we look forward to doing it again soon.
Thank you.
And we're back. Thank you again, Kiley, for everything today. We had a wonderful time talking with you. And thank you for all of the amazing work that you do as well. A quick reminder to anybody listening, go over to our website, normalizingnonmonogamy.com, click on the podcast tab, and you can find the podcast show notes there and links to all of Kiley's work.
I will also just throw a little bit of +1 to the advocacy work that Kiley does. The organizations that she mentioned, Open and NCSF, these organizations are always looking for people to jump in and help support. You can find out more at the links in the podcast show notes, but please check them out. We've been on calls with Kiley and we've been working in these organizations as well. They're fantastic organizations and can always use more support. So please check them out.
A quick reminder, our next virtual speed friending event is coming up January 15th. That is next Wednesday. If you're listening to this on the day it came out, we would love to have you come join us. You can sign up at our website on the events tab at the top, or in the events tab or the banner at the top of the page.
The events tab is at the top too.
I just made it really confusing.
And the last thing we want to tell you all about is our amazing interview we have coming up in 1 week with Jay. It is a great conversation and we can't wait to get it out there. So we'll see you all in a week.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening.